So I'm going to answer any questions you guys have about writing because we're kind of wrapping up this unit. So how long does a book usually take to write? For me, I have written a book in a month before, but it was really crappy and it was really short. Generally, I'd say a first draft takes 2 to 3 months, depending on like how much time I have. If I have a full-time job at the same time, like I do right now, it would take a lot longer. Most people average, I'd probably say like maybe 3 to 6 months, but like some people like up to a year. But then you've got people like Brandon Sanderson who writes like 5,000 page books in a year. So it kind of, it depends on the person. Okay, there's a lot of really good ones here. I'm excited. Okay, all right, so I'm just gonna kind of go in order-ish. How do you describe a setting that doesn't exist in real life? That is a great question. So describing it, this kind of like works with anything. Like, how do you describe a person that's not in real life? Or like, how do you describe magic? We don't have magic in real life. Draw from stuff that is in real life. Like, if you're creating this fantasy place, this world, you may have like a lot of new stuff. But like, what are some similarities to things on Earth? And that'll kind of help your reader to relate. Like, if you describe stuff similarly, like the leaves were, thick and green and they had a gloss on them or something, or like it was dry and arid like a desert, or this part is kind of desert like, but then it also had like this element which was different and cool. So like try to draw off of stuff that's like the things you see in real life, because then that'll help you bring your book feel more alive, but then you can like mix things up, use your imagination. How did you see it in your brain and just kind of try to describe it that way? That's a great question, because that's a lot of editors or agents, that's like kind of like a pet peeve of theirs, when like a reader describes their character just like full on in the first paragraph or like in the first page. So how do you describe a character like kind of throughout your writing that's not just like they stared in the mirror and describe what they look like? So I would say just kind of like try to cut in like small bits and pieces here. It's a good idea to like contrast from somebody else. Like you meet a new person, it's like, unlike this person who was tall and had brown eyes, like it's really annoying because I'm shorter than them and they always make fun of me for my freckles, or anything like that kind of like helps characterize them as well. Like they're insecure about their height, you can talk about them being short or too tall, or their freckles. You can always do like they like pushed their long braid over their hair. They caught a glimpse of themselves like passing a window, and like talk about how, oh, my eyes look so great today. This shirt really makes them pop or something. One that I've used a couple times is like if you're talking about like if you're describing parents, like, oh, my mom came into the room. Everybody always says I look like her because we have the same blonde hair, blue eyes, but I've got my dad's figure, like tall height or something like that. Those are kind of like ideas, ways to do it, because you definitely want to like describe your character up front. But you don't want it to be like this big block of just like describe what they look like. So it's kind of hard, but it is okay to like leave things out until later and like just kind of like sprinkle them in. How to know when a chapter ends or when to end a chapter. This is kind of hard. But like there's no like right or wrong. There's no like super hard rule to it. A lot of times you just like feel it. Like you're just kind of like, okay, this scene has ended, so now I'm gonna end the chapter. Like they had this big dialogue and they got this conversation over with, and it's like, okay, so we're gonna end with like they stormed out of the room, or now we have to go plan ... I don't know. Or sometimes you kind of just like check your word length, and if it's like getting a little bit too long, like closer to 5,000 words, you might want to just kind of go back and be like, okay, where is there like, is this scene bleeding into another scene? Like, should I just like cut it off here and split it up into 2 chapters? So lots of time, like if your characters are wrapping up one thing and they're about to move into another thing, that's a good place to end a chapter. If they, something's happening and they discover something new, that's kind of like an interesting cliffhanger to be like, ooh, what's coming next? So any place where like they're wrapping something up or they're like discovering something new that you can like tease into the next chapter is kind of like a good hook works. But a lot of times you just kind of go with your gut, like what seems like a good place to break before moving on to the next thing. How should you begin a story? What should you stay away from when beginning your story? Okay, this one is also hard because the beginning of your story is like the first thing that anybody's going to read and you want to like really hook them in. So try to start with some action, something interesting that's happening, or even like something that's like very different. So something that's like, oh, this is new, and we're talking about bubble barfing dragons. I don't know, that just came off the top of my head. Like something unique and new that's like, oh, this is like a cool different thing. I'm gonna read more. Or just right off the bat, like your person is running away from somebody. Or if you don't have any like action or something to start with, you can just try to like get your character's voice out there really quickly. Like your character is just doing a normal boring chore, but they say something really funny and witty, like just kind of getting an idea of like why it's going to be enjoyable to read your book. Is it going to be like interesting and action packed? Is it going to be like humorous and kind of fun? Is there going to be like weird, interesting stuff that nobody else has? So just try to come up with something that's new and unique that you can display right off the bat. Okay, is a book ever perfectly done? No, no. I'm pretty sure every author, even when their book is published and sold thousands of copies, if they read it through again, they'd be like, I wish I'd said that this way, or there's like 5 typos in here, or, I kind of think it would have been better to do this. So it's never perfectly done. You kind of just have to, at some point, kind of like kick it out of the nest and be like, all right, this is as good as it's probably going to get. I'm just going to let it go and be done with it, which can be really hard. Okay, how do you get inspiration and how do you get out of writer's block? Okay. Inspiration is kind of just like, it's sometimes really hard. I would advise like keeping a notes app page on your phone or something, because you never know when something's going to inspire you, and you could just like, ooh, that's a cool, interesting idea. Write that down so that later, if you're looking for inspiration, you already have a list of things that at one point you were like, this is cool and interesting. I like listening to music. Watching like movies or TV shows that you really like can kind of be inspiring. Like, oh, I really want to write a book that's got like this, Avengers feel or whatever. Yeah, just kind of like going on a walk. Lots of people, this actually works for writer's block as well. Lots of people advise doing like tasks that have your like body working but not your mind. So like going on a walk, like washing dishes, cleaning your house, so that like your body's working but it's not, you don't have to think about it. So like your brain is kind of free to just kind of like go wherever it's going, but like your body is occupied. This one you guys can't really control, but like going on a drive, I really liked like sitting in the back seat where we were driving somewhere and just like staring out the window and just like daydreaming. So any like daydreamy things help either come up with inspiration or help you with writer's block. Some general tips for writer's block. It can be really hard. But like if you're stuck on something and you want to write, but you're not sure where to go, physically go write somewhere else. Like if you usually write in your bedroom, go write in the living room, or like sit on the floor rather than at your desk, or go to the library, or like go to Starbucks and like get yourself a little treat and say, okay, I'm getting myself a treat at Starbucks. I'm going to sit here and write until I have something. That's usually what I do, because then I'm like bribing myself with a little treat and I usually get a lot done. I don't know. It's great. Sometimes you really need to take a break. So sometimes, just like let yourself be like, okay, I'm going to take a weekend off, or like a week off, even if it's like really bad. And just kind of like not really think about it. And then I'm going to like have a deadline for myself. Okay, on this day, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to force myself to write something. And just like give yourself permission to be bad. Like be like, okay, I don't care what it is. I'm just going to write something. So like, even if your sentence is literally like, he walks down the stairs and he stabbed this guy and then he walked out, like even if it's just like really basic, you wrote something. And usually if you can force yourself to write like a sentence or two, it'll generally start getting momentum, and then you'll just like be in a better space to just kind of keep writing and keep going. If you're having writer's block about like a specific scene or something, you're like, I don't know how to write this, just skip it. Just like in parentheses, in red ink, just write. Include, like, come back and write this later, and then just skip it. And just continue writing somewhere else. Continue writing something that's more fun. What if like I had like a really good streak and I was writing for like 3 months and then I stopped writing for like 3 months and I want to get back in writing, but like it's been too long and now I'm out of the habit. That one's harder because you have to like, really the only thing to do is just like sit down and make yourself do something. This is why it's kind of good to have a writing group, because then you have people you're accountable to who will literally be like, hey dude, where's my writing? You need to give me something so I can read it this week. It's a good idea to have people to be accountable to, like your friends, your parents, be like, hey, can you check in with me and just like make sure I've written today or tomorrow, or like if I haven't like let you know that I've written a paragraph, send me a meme gif. I don't know, whatever you want to do. Sometimes incentives work, like, okay, if I get my chapter done, I can go get a treat somewhere or go hang out with my friends. I can't do that until I've written 500 words. So there are lots of different things to do, and it's different for everybody, and each situation is different. Okay, so like, what's the line from taking inspiration from something else before it becomes plagiarism? Yes, because this is like, no idea is new, right? So this is actually really annoying because over Christmas break, I went into Barnes & Noble to look for my book in Barnes & Noble, and I found a book called The Immortal Games with a character who looked exactly like our main character, set in ancient Greece, with all of this stuff. I read the blurb and I'm like, are you what? This is like my book. We can't do something about it because it's just different enough that it's not plagiarism. Well, I'm not saying that like they copied us, like they could have come up with this idea completely on their own. I'm saying like they did not check that there was another book out there that was exactly like their book before publishing it. And so like I checked in with my editor and I'm like, is this like allowed? Like, can we do anything about this? And she's like, no, sorry, like it's just a really big bummer. And so it sucks.
Really big bummer.
A really big bummer. Yeah. So you can do a lot. I mean, don't plagiarize, obviously, but like you can you can get really close as long as you've got enough differences that like it's your own unique plot line. Then you're pretty much fine. That was probably like a bad idea because I'm complaining about somebody whose book is too close to mine. But you can definitely take inspiration from anything. If you're like, I really love this and I want to write like this, just make sure there's like a plot, your plot line is different, or your setting is different, or you know, your characters have different motivations, or your book is unique in a big way. So as long as your book is unique in a big way, it's fine. Like the Immortal Games book, it's like the Hunger Games versus like, it's more kind of close to like the Hunger Games, where mine is a little bit more of like a quest to find something. So they're different. It's just really annoying because it's like, well, theirs is already doing way better than ours, so nobody's ever gonna find our book ever again. They're always gonna be looking for that one.
Yeah, it's
So definitely, whatever like you're writing, check to make sure there's not already something like that too close out there. Because I mean, you can come up with ideas that you think are completely unique, and then somebody else just happens to come up with the idea that's completely unique as well. And yeah, so just be careful as well. Check to make sure, because it can be dicey. How do you write realistic dialogue? Mine always feels scripted and out of place. This is kind of hard to write it and then come back to it later and read it out loud. And like if you're like, nobody would say that, like kind of like try to visualize you, like you and your friend or somebody else, and like, okay, like how would you actually say that? Try to like act it out a little bit in your head. For the most part, like he said, she said, he asked, she asked is good because it helps kind of things move along. But you definitely want to break it up. When I was younger, I feel like in school they would like try to use like he exclaimed or something. But like being a little bit more like realistic, like he yelled, he shouted. Like it doesn't have to be fancy. If it's fancy, generally it starts to feel a little forced. Or you can like, instead of having a dialogue tag, is to add like an action instead. Like he slammed his fist on the table, dialogue. Or like dialogue, like threw his hands in the air to show that he's exasperated. Or like what's a physical thing that you can add to show how they're feeling. But yeah, for the most part, he said, she said is fine. They said, we said. You know, like it's always good to like read writing that you enjoy and kind of like dissect it a little bit. And what are some tips for maintaining a regular writing schedule? Well, a good idea is to like maybe give yourself a goal, like I'm gonna write X amount of words every week, or I'm gonna write a chapter a week. And then try to find time when you can. Yes. Or like, you know, if I don't have anything during academic support today, I'm gonna write. Or while I'm on the bus, I'm gonna write on my phone, or that might make you sick, I don't know. Or like right when I get home, even if I'm tired, I'm gonna grab a snack and I'm gonna write a paragraph or something. If you like feel like you don't have a lot of time, but like you want to be writing more, like try to write in like the like just like the little snippets of time that you do have. Like if you're waiting in a line, or like you're driving home, or you're waiting for dinner, or you've got like 10 minutes before, you know, your play date. I don't know what I'm saying. Something that I don't think I mentioned when we do the character template is like I sometimes take those personality tests for my characters. Like, okay, if I was my character, how would I answer all of these questions? And then I kind of like copy and paste, you know, the final answers, feedback from the personality tests, like to the bottom of my character sheet. Like they're a INFT or whatever. I don't know if you guys do those ones. One thing that I did one time is like I wrote like a couple of paragraphs about like as if my character was getting interviewed by like a cop or like a journalist or something. Like, what are some questions they would ask? Like, how would they answer those questions? Just like generic things. And then like kind of for each character, like how would they answer? Would they be sassy? Would they be like straightforward and serious? Would they be, you know, timid and shy? So sometimes doing like little writing practices that have nothing to do with your story, but are like in the headspace of your character can kind of help. How do you structure the first page of a new chapter? I don't think there's like a specific structure to do. Sometimes you want to just like get right into the action, or, you know, a lot of times if there's been like a time jump from the last chapter, you want to like introduce like what's happening, where are they, what are they doing. If it was a cliffhanger from the last chapter, just like get right into it. Like the last chapter was like, and then this thing happened, dun dun dun. The next chapter you want to get like right into it, like action, this is what's happening, this is how everybody's reacting, and then carry on with the scene. So yeah, it kind of depends on how your last chapter ended and what you want out of this new chapter. Some good advice for like starting your book, starting chapters is come in late, exit early. That's like a thing that I've heard a lot, is like you don't need to kind of set things up all the time. Sometimes you just like cut, get straight to the action. Like, okay, blah blah blah, you can fill in the blanks later. This is what's happening. We're moving. And then, you know, you don't need to kind of stop and reflect after everything that's happened. You can just kind of like end it and move on. How do you fix burnout or lack of motivation? Definitely take a break. I do NaNoWriMo every year, which is 50,000 words in a month. And usually I have to take like half to all of December off because I like burned myself out writing so much in November. So I'm like, okay, December is now my break month and I'll come back to it in January. You just got to make sure that you have a deadline and you're like, okay, January 2nd, I'm getting back to writing and I'm going to do it and I'm going to sit down and make myself do it. But definitely like it's okay to give yourselves breaks and time to like recover and relax and everything. How many pages per chapter? Honestly, I have not thought about pages in a long time. Usually I just go by word count. So I would say like 10-ish pages is like a nice full long chapter. But honestly, your chapter can be half a page. It can be like 1 page. Probably not all of your chapters want to be that length, that short, but it's good to vary the length of your chapter and don't feel like you need to fill your chapter in with stuff to make it longer. Like however long your scene is, whatever you wanted to get in that chapter, as soon as you're done, you can end it. There's not like an expectation for length of chapters or anything like that. And then how do you find out what the public is waiting for so you can make the most money out of your book releases? Oof, that is hard. That is a hard one. Kind of just anticipate the trends and what's popular. Like, let's see, the big books out right now. This might be a little old, but like the biggest one recently was Fourth Wing. So that's like dragon riding book. So like I'm guessing that like dragons and dragon riding and fantasy is going to be kind of popular for a little bit right now. That's kind of what my guess would be like. We just got out of like a fairy fae realm kind of trend. Like there was like all of the Court of Thorns and Roses books and the Cruel Prince books and like lots of fays and fairies. So I would maybe say like maybe stay away from fays and fairies just because I feel like we just got out of a big trend there. But I think things are kind of in flux right now, so you might be like, okay, there's nothing like huge or super dominant right now, so I feel comfortable being flexible and whatever I want to write, I can write. But if you're like feeling like, oh, there's a lot of dragon books being published right now, and I've got this dragon book idea, might be good to focus on that. So again, that's why I think agents are great because that's their job, that's what they do, and they're good at that. And we'll talk about that next unit. Okay. Man, that was a lot of good questions. Any final thoughts, questions? You can always ask them later or anytime if you think of any. Okay, good. Hopefully that was helpful.